Yes, the NFC South, as we know it, could be on its way to a new look. Here's where each team stands relative to the approximate salary cap for 2021. Carolina and Tampa have plenty of space, but Atlanta and New Orleans could be in trouble. In fact, New Orleans is estimated to be further over the 2021 salary cap than any team in the league. So what's the dream scenario for each team in the NFC South as they approach this offseason? Steve Smith Sr. and Scott Pioli are back with us now, two guys that know this division very well. Scott, we'll start with your former team, the Falcons. What is the best case offseason scenario in terms of additions for Atlanta?
Best case scenario is that they've got to get some cap space first of all, and one of the best ways to do that is by moving on from certain players. And I believe that trading Dante Fowler and acquiring a draft pick for him would be ideal for the team. Right now, he's sitting at a cap number that it's at $18.5 million, which is far too high. If they trade him and get a little bit of currency in terms of draft picks, they can pick up $9.2 million of cap space. If they don't get a trade, that dream's going to go away and they'll have to release him and pick up $10 million possibly after the June 1st. Now, the other thing that I see as a trade scenario and the big benefit that the Falcons could get is they're sitting at number 4 now. One of the best things that I think that they can do is trade backwards, acquire picks, get more draft currency, because when you're in cap trouble, you have to build your team through the draft, make it younger and cheaper. So move back from 4 deep enough to gather picks, but also put yourself in position where you could get that quarterback of the future, maybe Mac Jones.
All right, Scott, one of these days I'm going to have to take a look at that binder that you use to sort of do all of these equations and figure out all of these scenarios there. Steve, let's go to you. What about the Panthers? What's the dream offseason scenario for Carolina?
I mean, living here in North Carolina, the dream scenario on the radio, in the paper, on the streets is why not go down the street? Anderson, South Carolina is just down the street, 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 12 minutes to be exact. Round trip is about 271 yards, 271 miles. So obviously Deshaun Watson, that's what they want. When you talk about the Carolina Panthers and a Deshaun Watson, you all automatically associate that with their Super Bowl run in 2015 with Cam Newton. They want a quarterback. Now, that's nothing against Teddy Bridgewater. That's just saying dream scenario. But also, at the end of the day, that's a dream scenario. But realistically, they need to build their defense. They have not found a guy to anchor that middle with the absence of an early retirement of a Luke Kuechly, and then they also need another corner outside of Dante Jackson. They have Jeremy Chin, who's a safety, but also plays linebacker as well. They just relieved KK Short or Brian Burns on the outside. So you need to have another guy in the interior D-line, 2 guys to help Brown that they acquired, but also to replace KK Short, because that allows those interior linemen to get active. And what's the best offense? The best offense is to have a defense that can slow down the opposing offense.
All right, that's a long list, but I guess in dreams, there are no limits, Steve. All right, let's keep things going with the Saints. Scott, what are you dreaming up for New Orleans this offseason?
This is interrupted sleep when you start talking about the New Orleans Saints. This is not a dream. And when you look at this, there is so much. You look at the fact that they have reduced Drew Brees down to the minimum wage for veterans, and they're still sitting at $69 million over the cap. So again, unfortunately, what you're dreaming about is not acquisitions and not the fun stuff of building your team up. You're going to have to start to deconstruct your team and think about the future. One of the players that I think that they could move on from this year is Quan Alexander, who's in the last year of his deal. And if they were to trade Quan and possibly pick up a little bit of currency in terms of draft picks, they can pick up $13.2 million of cap space. Again, the reward there is draft currency for either this year's draft or in 2022. Then the next dream that I woke up to, again, these aren't dreams that I could go through. I woke up to this one, and that was having to trade Janoris Jenkins, who's going to be 33 years old this season and has a cap number of $14.2 million. That's definitely something that they need to move on. Hopefully they can trade him. Now the cap savings would only be about $8.2 million, but maybe even getting a late round pick, getting something for these situations is what the Saints need to be dreaming of.
All right, here we go. I guess melatonin might be required in that sense. All right, finally, the Super Bowl champs. Steve, what's the dream scenario for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this offseason?
The dream scenario for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has to be, hopefully they can sign all 24 of their unrestricted free agents. But that's not going to happen. And now they have to pick and choose who they're going to keep. And Chris Godwin is a very interesting conversation because you've heard some noise out there. Well, I wouldn't necessarily believe a guy would leave for money and change up a new system. I'm not sure what Kool-Aid they're drinking, but that's the whole point of becoming a free agent. Understanding, especially after winning a Super Bowl, that you bring some equity, automatic equity to that team, and also understanding when you don't sign a contract now when it's that time, think about how many players over the years have waited an extra year or given a discount and then they've gotten injured, and now all of a sudden that contract that was on the table is no longer on the table. So I don't believe that giving a hometown discount, that's not feasible, because at the end of the day, these players will not be given hometown discounts when they're released. They will not be giving half of their contract when they're released. So I don't believe they should operate in the same realm. And I think when organizations do that, it's a little bit of gamesmanship that shouldn't be played.